So we're going to call this meeting to order at 5:37. I'm gonna look at Geo's. We're gonna see if there's any comments from the public. Seeing none,
This public has none.
we will move on to our discussion items. Attached to your minutes are the guidelines and application for the grants for this year. They are open now for application, and the deadline is June 14th at 5 p.m. Let's see if there's no significant changes, but for the purposes of anyone watching this recording, and certainly for the purposes of our newest member, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So the way this works is this hotel occupancy tax, you're allowed to use it by state law for certain categories. So the first part of the two-part test is, does it benefit the motel, hotel, the lodging industry? Secondly, does it fit in one of these, in the back page, one of these 9 categories? And the city of Alpine offers grants within, I think, 5 of them, with that being advertising, promotion of the arts, historical restoration and preservation, sporting events, and transportation. And so then the most important part for this committee is the criteria on which we score. So let me get you to that place. So it's page 1, 2, 3, 4, the back of the second page. You'll see applicant scoring. The Hot Grants Committee will review the completed applications and evaluate them based on the following criteria: impact on overnight hotel stays. That reviewing the application, does it demonstrate professionalism with a sound business and promotional plan? Do we have confidence in the organizer's capacity to host a successful program or event and promote effectively out of the area? Do they have diversity of revenues? It's nice when they're not asking the city for every penny of their event. So if they're showing that they're working other sources of income, that is a positive. Then this is a binary, yes or no. Did we get a report from last year's event if they got a grant before? And if they didn't, then you actually don't even see it. So that it
don't see their application.
Yeah, it doesn't go through. But so I work that, and we have gotten 100% reporting. Then lastly, encouraging new events and innovative programs. And we have what we do, we'll have, I think it will be a workshop meeting for the discussion part. And that way we've got that flexibility. And then I have a spreadsheet that we work, and we, after the 14th, Geo processes all of the applications, makes one big file and sends it out to all of us to look over. And then we meet and score everything. Then we see, were there any questions that really needed to be answered before a final recommendation could be made for council? And then also that's a long meeting. So we then take a break, come back, ideally the same week, and for a second meeting. And that one's a formal meeting because we finished the budget spreadsheet we started the first time around. So we score, and then we make a funding recommendation to council, and then we vote on that at the end of the second week. And that is really what we're looking at right now. I wanted to make sure that you guys knew the timeline for that. So middle of next month. And Gio, what kind of time frame do you see as reasonable to receive, digest, and regurgitate all his applications?
Whatever y'all need, really. I don't really have any issues. Thursdays are pretty open for me if y'all want to keep, on that day.
Okay. Well, we'll when we get to the end of the agenda, we'll set those actual dates. And so does anybody have any questions, comments, suggestions regarding this year's guidelines or next year's. Yeah.
Chris, you just want to share what the budget was this past year and what we think we're talking about this year, to help give this perspective about how much funding does the
Right.
community get out.
This last year, it was 420,000 that were awarded in grants. The year before was 400. From what I could tell, we brought in about 739,000 last year. The year before that was actually 745 or 46, something like that. So we went down a tiny bit. I don't have any solid projections on. Okay, so then I think we're looking at the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
we're gonna be
less.
looking at the same,
Yeah.
this year's collections are actually down,
Okay,
as well as our.
okay. That's what I was hearing at Texas Mountain Trail Region Board, that Fort Davis way down this year.
We're seeing
And and the total ask this last year was?
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
want
over
to.
$1 million.
So yes,
What you asked for?
we awarded 420 and we had just over 1 million in requests, so we had to cut a lot. We shall see how that goes.
That's why it's important to have good criteria, make sure they check all the.
Yep.
Yeah, and this year, we hopefully have eased the applicants in to understanding the requirements. Because last year I had an extra week after the deadline to backfill all the required attachments and make sure everybody got everything in. And this year we don't have that. So I made it really big in the email to everybody that you've got to have all these, or at least something under these headings, or the committee can't review it. So anything else on that before we move on? Then we will review the council's discussion on committee policies on the April 2nd city council meeting. There was a discussion item on the formation of this board specifically, but it also applies to the rest because the council doesn't like to do one-off rule changes. And the question is that was specifically discussed was, can someone sit on this board and also submit a grant for funding for this board? There's two sides of the argument. One being we have had a lot of difficulty getting knowledgeable and interested people who are willing to come to the meetings and get us quorums. There are also specific categories of seats, that we've discussed. And so on the one side, there's the question, if we don't let anybody who ever asks for hot funds sit on the board, will that limit our ability to fill the board? Maybe. But the council's feeling was unanimous that we should not have that conflict on the board. And so, John, you need to be aware of that since you've been the only person in that category. I think you've done a good job of serving in a neutral way and managing that conflict, but it is a conflict, and the council does want, I don't know when they'll act on that, but it seems like at some point that they'll apply a conflict of interest policy to all of the boards and commissions, it sounded like. And at that point, John, you would not be eligible to continue on the committee.
Well, you can hear me, but thank you. My camera just failed.
And so I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. There's also the question of, do we want to remove or change those categories of this different seats on this board in order to get more people in? It's a balancing act between wanting knowledgeable people who have skin in the game in terms of getting people here, because we do want people who are motivated to boost visitation, sitting on the board. Now, that is not necessarily defined by those categories. So, but that came up a little at council, but that's after the conflict, a lower priority. How'd I do?
Needed fun. I was gonna ask what your all's view of that, because one of the struggles we're having is there are some people who would like to be on the hot committee who are very specific about wanting money. And that's what we're struggling with.
Maybe some people can be grandfathered in.
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt it, to be fair.
But does it really give them an advantage? I mean, do you think people can be objective, or I guess the council says no?
Well, yeah, well, as Darren Nance, Ward 3 mentioned, that the appearance of impropriety is that's the benchmark to avoid. And so giving even the opportunity, if it can be avoided, that thinking is that it's best to be avoided. And then it's just really, yeah, it's really difficult to say no to one person when we've already said yes to another and continue to. So, one other thing I would like to ask you, Rick, is about the voter registration question that came up. Because that's a requirement for city board service.
Yep.
And I don't think there's any confidentiality here. So Paresh Johnny, who represents both the Hampton and the Holiday Inn, which is over 60% probably of our hotel tax collections.
Yep.
He has applied,
Yep.
but he is currently a Canadian citizen working on his United States citizenship. He cannot register to vote and in Brewster County. And so right now he's ineligible, which, you know, I want that voice on this commission. So what do you think in terms of taking that to council?
In my view, we're gonna take it to council. You know, I think having any of the large hoteliers on the committee is really important, particularly because, you know, they're collecting the money, and I think they bring a lot of value to the table, so by all means. So if I'm happy to go sponsor a resolution to go do that. It has to be an ordinance change.
Yeah, so that is then 3 meetings, probably. Is that right?
I'm sorry.
Or more?
So we have to develop the draft.
Yep.
And council, well, actually, the attorneys have to. Council gets time to review it, and we've just changed our time frame for
2 weeks.
council packets.
Yep.
So
Right.
we're looking at more like 8.
Okay, so what if we invited Paresh to the workshop meeting as a public participant, but then he wouldn't vote?
Yeah.
And that way he'd kind of ease him in.
But then you get to see the process.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I talked to Presh about it, and he wants to participate, and you've talked to him.
Mhm.
It's the citizenship issue, so yeah, by all means, invite him to the workshop.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have comments, questions about the policy side of things? Well, then the remaining piece, picking up from half a year ago or something, the last time we had a substantive discussion. So we talked about, let me get my Zoom up and see if I can share my screen. I'll show you some of the data we've been working with. Yeah, should have had that already open. So I've been making a monthly visitor economy index report using data from the visitor dashboard that we partner with Marfa to get, as well as short-term rental data that we also partner with Marfa to get. Let's see if I can find this link. Is the link on the site, Gio, or do I just need to look in an email?
The link for,
this meeting?
yes, it's on the main page of the city website. It says
Thank
meeting
you.
login details.
Got it?
Yep.
On my way. That's good. Sorry, you guys. Once I'm in there, Gio, would you give me a screen sharing?
Yes. You should have it now.
Yes, thanks. Okay, so this is the index that I've been working on. And this is through February. I've just been adding March's numbers, which look good compared to February. And now I want to get the
Are those amounts of people or revenue?
this actually, yeah, see, this is an index. So what I've got is all of these data inputs that are weighted. So at the top, we have visitor device count. That's the number of mobile devices observed from visitors. They can tell the difference by whether this is their home place or not. You know, they can sort that. So that's the number of visitor phones observed, which is a sample and not 100% reliable.
It's interesting to see that it's in March, the big spike, one of the big spikes is in March, which is
Yep.
Spring break, not spring break.
which is oh God, chemo brain. Help me out here.
Yeah, spring break.
Spring break. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And then we've got the credit card count because our visitor dashboard combines mobile geolocation data and credit card spend. So what it's best for is telling us where people are coming from and on average how much they spend. So it's good for targeting ads. It's not as good as telling how we did. So these numbers, I use them a lot for targeting, but I weight them very low in this index. And then we have total visitor spending, which is also from that same sample base. And then we have short-term rental revenue. That is much more, in my opinion, reliable because it's not a sample. It's all of the listings on VRBO and Airbnb in our location. And then we also have their occupancy percent, and more important, their number of booked nights. Because scroll down so this.
How many STRs are there? No. There are not them.
Registered?
Yes.
There's about almost 70 registered. I know this number is it's difficult.
Gio has a master's spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Was it 82, 78, 82?
And it's around 130 is what they tell us.
Everyone else is predicting we have over 100.
Yeah.
But they're also looking at it if someone rented out a room for even one day out of a month, out of a whole year, they flag it as an STR.
Yeah, if they showed up on the platform,
Yeah.
then they're counted.
So this is this AirDNA, so they don't take hotel data, just
Exactly.
STR.
So next, which I keep saying I'm just about to, and I really am just about to, but I just got historic data. This I get the AirDNA comes in about a month behind time. So I've got March for them. Zartico comes in, I've got March and April for them. But now I've got an STR report, which includes our hotels, and it's about 8, I think, of our hotels. And I've got roughly 6 years of data for them. And so I'm going to incorporate that. But unfortunately, it's super expensive to get it every month. So it's more like a once a year we can afford to buy it. Yeah. It's like you can buy the last 8 years for $600, but to get it every month, it's $7,000. So
and they just get it from the state comptroller's office.
no, this is actually self-reported by the hotels.
And they're not required to report. That's why we don't have all the hotels.
Yeah.
The state comptroller really, all their bottom line is they just want the money. not gonna tell us occupancy, it's not gonna tell us,
Oh, right.
it's only gonna tell us that
How
they
much they
paid
paid
the
per
state
month.
this much.
Yeah,
But then you also have to take into consideration how much of that was not included because they had exempt employees staying there, federal government employees. Stuff like
yeah, the chart that I'm most interested in of late is the one that shows the two lines together, because that's what makes the occupancy number almost worthless, because the bottom number, this is the number of nights booked, which you see is trending up fairly healthily, but this is the number of available nights. And so this is supply and this is demand. And so you see supply outstripping demand dramatically. And so that explains so many of our short-term rentals complaining about business being terrible. So while
They're flooding the market.
we have brought in more people on a kind of incremental basis, but we had a lot more
Oh,
increase.
build it, they will come, didn't work.
Didn't work.
that. Only the prison system was.
So yeah, I just wanted to share this with you guys. I'll also be really looking at that SDR report, the hotel report, and the way that works is the hotels report to the company STR so that they can then get back a competitive analysis of their market and see how are we doing relative to other towns, other properties in my market, but they aggregate it. And that's why we couldn't buy the whole 8 years, because no one hotel can represent more than half of the data, because they don't want you to be able to tell like whose business is really being represented here. And so we didn't even qualify. No, we couldn't have possibly gotten that data until I think about 6 years ago. I've got to really dig in there, but that should have really good resolution in terms of timeframes. So I'm hopeful that that report combined with the Zartico will let me give you a better report on how each event performed with the hotels as you're looking at those applications than I have been able to in the past. In the past, it's been, well, it seems like there were people here, you know.
When we talk about the main events, you know, like when you have Viva Big Ben and Cowboy Poetry, and so you should see those spikes in those months that they're being held. But then as you look at the hotel, we still have all these rooms. So yeah, there may be a spike in, but we're not quite filling that gap.
Well, that's why, like you're saying, February is down so far. So like even with a huge, because Cowboy Poetry at this point is filling up like almost a whole week because they come pretty like early and stuff. Like it's still not enough to save a really slow month.
Yeah,
Like
It's not a really slow month, but we also know a lot of them are coming with RVs.
That's
and
true,
they're
too.
Not actually staying in.
yeah, but that should be helping your sales tax
Are we able to
because they pay
consider sales tax
the
monthly sales tax
RV.
reports?
yes, and I mean, we have to primarily consider hotels, but if there's two events and one and they roughly equally impact the hotels, but one of them we know also generates a lot of sales tax, yeah, you can consider that, but you couldn't do it instead of the hotel impact. Okay.
And a lot of the sales tax reports are confidential. They won't release this hotel brought in this much sales tax or this. They prefer to do it by category. The retail brings in X amount. Hospitality, they general.
Okay.
And our monthly payment from the state, we know it's going to.
My monthly payments to the state.
You're like, I think you're
So this is great data, Chris. You talked about weighting. Can you give a little more about what you mean by that?
Yes. So when I make the index, I'm comparing the movement. I pick 1 month as like my index month. That's the number one, and then I do a percentage change over time.
Okay.
And then
CPI.
yes, and so I gave each of those inputs a weight based on how reliable I thought the data was. So the Zartico devices and card count, total spend, and also the air DNA occupancy, because I didn't think that was a reliable number. I gave all those a weight of 1, and then the revenue per available room for air DNA, I gave that a weight of 2, and then the overall short-term rental revenue and number of nights booked, I weighted at a 3, and then I combined all of those. So it's like if the revenue went up 1%, it's relative 3 times what what the observed number of phones would do. And so that calculation generates this chart.
Right.
And so and from what I could see from March, it was a big jump, but we would expect that from February to March.
So, second question, do you have the hot spots where people are coming from?
Yes. That is something.
512.
Yes,
Even cell phone
though
numbers.
we've got you can sort it by zip codes, but I got to go in the back end of Zartico and dig around for it. They generally use the DMA, which is Nielsen uses that. So like we're actually in the Midland Odessa. Oh,
Market.
yeah.
It's the
Marketing
TV
region.
market.
Yeah, I can't remember what it stands for. And so San Antonio is actually has been moved up. It surprises me because it stayed. Austin was always really high. Dallas is kind of a close second after Austin. And then Houston's close to that, and San Antonio kind of after that. But it was all the metros that we'd see. San Antonio's spending and visitation have gone up. And we see particularly in the way in their credit card spending that Austin's like average transaction is really high, but we also see the majority of their activities going to Marfa. There's just a really tight connection there. And so we get Austin people, they have a good time here, they do spend money. But it's kind of like even with the others, as opposed to like the Marfa, it's way above the others. And so our data kind of gets skewed by combining with Marfa. I have to really carefully separate that out. And so I'm considering San Antonio actually a really kind of an opportunity market right now to promote to. Whereas before it wasn't an afterthought. We definitely included them, but the last kind of analysis I did with our Zartico person, we were digging into that, and that looked really good.
So for the next season, you'll be doing more advertising to San Antonio over Austin.
Yeah, or I'll do some specific like social media ads that, and I'll include shopping, as a focus, because that's the thing that you see Austin and food, that average spend is way more focused on dining and drinking, and San Antonio was way more retail, and I found that pretty interesting. Yeah.
We need to fill those stores downtown.
Yeah.
So this might be a question more for you, Megan, but as we talked about from a business line standpoint or from the chamber, how do we take advantage of integrating this data in a way where the city is paying for some, the associations pay for some, we can use this to be able to get the information out in a more forceful way, if I can use that, because clearly Chris needs it for advertising and all that. That's for sales tax and everything else. I'm just trying to think about the private side.
You approve my DP position in the budget so that they can work back with the ABA.
Right, okay, so.
And
No, and I get that, because part of it, the business lines in the chamber have money they can put in as well, which would help defer the cost from the city. You get an integrated database that makes sense.
So my envision moving forward, because Chris has worked really hard to put these in a usable format.
Yeah.
Is to fill and create a position for economic development within the city.
Yeah.
We do tie back with Marfa because they really were first ones on the bandwagon. That's when we went for the data.
Yeah.
But to allow the ED person to develop very usable here's the information to give it to businesses, to give it to the Business Alliance. I know that the county has reached out and wanting to add them,
Yeah.
but then we would be having larger sources of data to have to pull apart, and it may not be feasible. But I really want us to create it here and share it with everyone.
But by all means, I view it as a potential revenue source for the city.
Not only that, but it also helps like the businesses and the Business Alliance develop plans for how you move
No
forward
question.
with your business.
Well, one thing that Jennifer that owns Haviland on Holland said
Yeah.
that she is more than willing to like share with other business owners that she did like during the eclipse big pop that we saw downtown. She's like, you know, she said, I knew that I needed to have my store open more because she saw the bookings in all of her Airbnb and her hotel stuff. So like she responded to it. She's like, but I don't have the connections with the businesses here yet because I don't think our businesses were prepared for what was coming.
Yep, yep.
They weren't open, the restaurants weren't open. Like we knew it was a big deal, but we didn't know how much was gonna be passing through here.
Yeah, because
Until
we
it
knew
was
we
already
weren't
here.
totality, so we,
Yeah,
like, maybe if
and
we're lucky, we'll get some, but
Well,
we
I-
got a lot.
we got a
That's-
lot, yeah.
That's
I
where the
can't wait to
economic
see what
development
April's number.
position comes into
Yeah.
play. The first year will of course be a building year. I have a game plan for them to move forward with data and being able to present. The Business Alliance really is that association back with all the businesses.
Yep.
So it would be really partnering together, and then every month our ED person would present kind of a, hey, this is where we're at. But for me, the first year really is gonna be building up all the data that we need, the storefronts, the types of businesses, things that we kind of we all know we have restaurants, we all know, but how many, who's doing what, locations, what businesses are open for sale? We know we have 2 Chinese restaurants that are both gone. We have those 2 facilities. There's a lot that's gonna go to it.
Yeah.
But the idea would be that the city has the data to share. Because I would hate for the Business Alliance or some other entity to go out and then we're stuck with the full amount. Because if we plan this correctly, we'll build it and no, they won't. We'll build it, but then we'll have the data to get people in.
Wow.
Well, and when we have a person in that ED position, that's when it might be worth looking again at that SDR, the broader data, because that's 7,000, to get it every month, the hotel stuff, that is actually a much broader set of reports that all comes into one thing. It's like, you can't just get hotels monthly. It's like you can get 8 years of hotels, at a one-time cost, but that monthly dashboard, it's like more like all the real estate activity and businesses and all
That's what I
kinds
say,
of stuff.
because we don't have like the stuff that you're talking about putting together, because we don't have like a true commercial, like real
So
estate.
That was
Yeah.
what would be developed, and it also goes back to, I'm hoping to go for a comprehensive plan. I'm so excited about the compensation.
Yeah.
That's where they come to my mind. Comprehensive plan, because the city needs to formulate how we want to change and grow. Like you said, our commercial district is very limited. We don't want to impede on all the residential, but at the same time, we have to allow for businesses to come in. And I know the scheduling is hard because we have a lot of mom and pop businesses and we want to support them and we want them to grow. But I know poor Heidi doesn't want to work 24/7. And so it's just really working back with businesses to say, hey, these are some of the big things that may assist you. These are resources, here's some data. And then they can come up with their own game plan. I mean, they have an understanding of how they want their businesses to run.
I think that from the visitor's perspective, they're actually really understanding of stores not being open 7 days a week in a small town. They just don't like an empty storefront, truthfully. It's not that they're not open every day, it's the empty ones that look worse.
And so
Because
that's
that
where
makes it
collecting
feel
the
like,
data to get the people
Yeah.
in the store.
because that, and like, the people that buy stores here that have no intention of doing anything with it and just own a building and building quarters is like such a detriment to the community as a whole. And I don't know how you fix that because they have the money, they have the power. But that just makes it look like we're a town that's in decline to a visitor instead of, but when really you're like, no, they bought that building 5 years ago and they never had any intention of doing anything with it. They wanted a tax write-off. You know, but they understand a store not being open 7 days a week in a small town because they would like, they like that when they are open, that they're talking to the owner. Because it's the owner that's there 5 days a week, you know, when they are open. So I think that it's not that they expect it to be open all the time. They just don't like to see the empty ones, and that we have so many that are empty right now. Because, you know, when I talk to them, that's the feedback that I usually get.
Wonder if we could just get them to do something with their storefront windows.
And that is what they've done in a lot of towns. So that's a Main Street program that has happened other places. They have turned it into, at least in the interim, they put, you know, they do the stuff that Joe does with like vinyls or art stuff, or history things, some of the like an extension of what the museum has going on, things like that in empty storefront windows. That's a huge thing that they do so that they aren't just sitting empty in other Main Street programs. Because yeah, then at least it's not just sitting there. And like Walt let me put a Christmas thing in what would be your store now 1 year, just to advertise downtown shopping. I just asked him and he was like, yeah, sure. You know, so that wasn't sitting there empty. But
And those are incentives that can be designed through the ED as well. It's not just the Main Street.
right,
There's
right.
several
But I'm just saying
different
that's the ones that have talked about it at travel conferences because they usually attend TACVB and they're the ones that have executed it other places.
And it's also understanding the intention of the building. And that's where this person can come in and work with owners. Some people do buy these buildings and then realize that the repairs far exceed what they thought of. And we definitely know some buildings that are gonna be like that. But the position also is designed to create the incentive to entice people to come and wanna. I mean, we all know rent is really expensive. It's not really an incentive for some of our locals. So it's expensive. They're looking at their overhead and they want to profit, they want to make money. So having this position is hopefully gonna kind of create that bridge so that we do fill them, and if we don't, you know, we can find the incentive to get the property on the bid. At least let someone do something with the fleet. We're kind of I am excited, because I think it's exciting. But going back to the data, I mean, the data is something we want to develop together. Not data.
Good.
So, yeah, I wanted to share that with you. It's a good discussion.
Can you
Any-
send me that?
Hmm?
Can you send me that?
Absolutely. Anything else on that before we move on? Then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, at our last.
Oh, I have a question
Yeah,
on that,
yeah,
actually.
please.
There was a comment from someone who works in a hotel, he's a nighttime auditor, saying that they have a huge problem with people using like the military, you know, trying to get the rate that doesn't get taxed. It's the hotel's call on that, correct? Or he was saying like, why don't we cap it on how many can be used each night in a hotel and things like that? You know, because if you're paying a government contractor rate, you don't pay the hotel occupancy tax. And
That has nothing to do.
right, that's the hotel that,
Well, the exemptions are set by the federal and state government.
right, but who's they accept? Because I know that like when
That would
I,
be a hotel.
right, because when I traveled, if I wasn't traveling for work, they didn't like when I was a government contractor, I didn't get, if I wasn't traveling for work, I didn't get to use my government contracting rate. Right. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. If people are not traveling for work, they shouldn't be letting them use it and they should be paying the hotel tax. And I know we do have a lot of people here traveling, especially with like, we want them here, the firefighters and those things. But if people are not, that should be handled by the hotels. But he was like, yeah, if it's somebody's, because their, you know, cousin is a government contractor, they should get this government rate, and I'm like, well, don't give it to them.
I know, yeah.
That's just, that's
So
very
it's an
simple.
internal issue on their end.
Yeah,
think so.
cause we shouldn't be missing out on the hot tax because of that. And I think that they are in one of the major chains, and I'm sure that they are all probably going more to major chains, because that's where any like corporation or government is that's where your cards are that's where they're gonna want you to use. Like, I know that from, again, when I was a government contractor, you're usually supposed to use a major chain for your corporate travel cards instead of like going to the local chains. Yeah, yeah. You can't go to SCR for sure, but you usually can't use a local chain or a local, boutique hotel either. But I don't know, like, if there's anything we could do to say, like, address or send the rules to them about who is exempt, because I would think that, so that I know it's their internal thing. I don't know what that would be about, but
They would have to think about that. I'm not in a position to tell them how to.
It's hard to tell the front desk girl, like, to give people a hard time when they're like work for the government. They need this rate. She's gonna be like, okay.
right, but they're
Everything.
legally obligated to be collecting the hot tax for us. It would be like if somebody called Heidi, like, I don't want to pay sales tax. Says, no, you have to. Like, it's not an option. Sales taxes instead of, hot taxes instead of sales tax.
So they would have to be like, okay, give me the proof.
But whenever, right,
They're
and
like,
that's
and
exactly
then
what
they
when a nonprofit,
Like they
but somebody comes in and they say, I'm a nonprofit, I shouldn't have to pay sales tax. They have to show paperwork to not pay the sales tax. So it
Because
should
if
be,
they don't pay it,
right, so it should be the same process to not pay the hot tax.
When I used to ask the people were like, oh, I'm tax exempt. I'm like, okay, no problem. Just send me the paperwork so that I can file it with the.
Corporations have rules and regulations. Yeah. That's an internal. They need more training to address this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, we shouldn't be missing out on collecting hot tax because somebody doesn't want to properly handle, like, claiming to be both.
Yeah. Well, certainly shouldn't.
Sounds like an ethical thing.
Yeah, not a lot we can truly do about it.
So,
Yes.
last question on data, can
Yeah.
we get data, for certain events?
My hope is that historically, yes, to the hotel trend, because it should be down to the week and the
Okay,
weekend.
Okay, very good.
But I really need to dig into it, and now I absolutely have to before we meet again.
Good, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I caught it as well.
And so the last thing we talked about, strategic uses of the fund balance, because that's something that the council's going to have to address at some point, because we have historically underspent our hotel tax collections. And part of that has been we award grants that don't get completely spent. And part of it for quite a few years was actually me being conservative and not realizing that the law was that we had to spend half of what we collected on advertising. I thought we meant half what we spent had to be on advertising. And so I actually made sure of that, no problem. But I underspent dramatically because I was trying to be, this public money. I want to get the most out of the least, and so part of that is my fault. But we do have a sizable fund balance that at some point the council's going to have to address. And so we did talk at our last big discussion meeting about a couple of different ideas, one being an itinerary app and one being funding like a concierge service in town to help people book their trips. And after that discussion, I felt really tired because I'm trying to imagine actually implementing those things on top of the rest of the stuff I'm doing. But that staffing can be addressed in the funding of whatever project we're going to do. But the other thing I wondered about is what ways that we could evaluate these ideas as to, other than that sounds good, that sounds exciting. That sounds like it might work. And I wondered on each of these things that can we come up with a research model, a rubric to try and vet some of the ideas against things that other folks have done to get some kind of idea as to what's the best investment. And I don't have good answers to that, but there were things I wanted to toss out as we go forward and we wrestle with this question. This committee, I know Rick would like this committee to weigh into council on these questions. That's something that we'll want to consider. But of course, our immediate task is going to be reviewing those grants and coming up with that recommendation to council. But does anybody have any thoughts about those projects, other projects that sound interesting, or methods by which we might do that market research?
Is advertising only a virtual or paper thing, or is like improving the city also a form of advertising?
According to the Texas Hotel Lodging Association, improving the city is not. That they have really specific rules and to the point where like upgrading a park, say, that is something that you can put hotel tax money into upgrading a park, but it has to be a park that is significantly used by tourists, and then it has to go to the state legislature to specifically approve it for your community. So that's the kind of
But maybe it's
obstacle thing.
different that Main Street thing where you're filling in the windows, that.
The category, it wouldn't be advertising, but it would be signage. One of the things that the category for signage is specifically for wayfinding to get people to areas of visitor interest. But what early on when the county was starting their roadside interpretive program using hot funds, I asked Justin Bragel, who's the lead counsel for the Texas Hotel Lodging Association, who's actually going to be here on June 5th to talk about uses of the fund. I asked him about that. What about interpretive signage? Can that work under that wayfinding? And he said, sure. Yeah, that was fine. And so I think we could, like, say you wanted to do displays of certain kind or those kind of vinyl wraps or whatever that you sometimes see in shopping centers when they're trying to rent something to beautify. I think we could, by including, I don't know, some information, maybe some images of some visitor attractions elsewhere in town or something, we could find ways to make those legal signage expenses. They wouldn't be advertising.
I think
because
new downtown, like full signage stuff would be great.
Yeah.
Like we haven't had, because those Heart of the Arts ones have blown apart,
They have.
and that was never a great flaming heart. Like, is not really the message you want
Yeah.
to send about.
and that model, I included a bunch of directional arrows where appropriate to show people where public parking was, and that way, and now restrooms.
Yeah.
We didn't
And
have-
shopping.
Yeah, and so we can include wayfinding in
But
the downtown.
I've been
banner
thinking
program.
too, like with all of it, and if it would fall into signage, and be on the poles, with all of the additional murals happening all the time, like Nancy's original map has become very dated. And I think it's just going to keep getting dated, and you can't expect her or any artist to keep renumbering. I think it would serve better purpose to create a art trail, and like that would be really cool to do on the poles. So like you're just directing them, like if you just walk this path,
Like a
you're gonna,
treasure hunt?
or just like if you're on this, like keep telling them to like just go this way and tell them where they're gonna turn, and you're gonna see them all, but you don't ever have to number them all.
Right.
And then like let the artist take
So it's like,
control.
look for this.
Yeah, and like let the artist, so like you would point them in the right direction of where they're gonna see them, and call it, like I said, art trail or whatever you wanna call it. And then let the artist work on how they want to tell the story of their piece at the actual piece. So they're never numbered. It's not like a physical paper thing that I'm printing and buying cardstock, by the 20, whatever I bought this last time, like, you know, to print it all the time. So they're following that like through downtown. And again, because they're gonna keep being along probably the same path. And then if we ever have to, you know, we could probably always add a little more to redirect and keep putting people back on the same path. Because those paths of the historic trail, like Chris got off easy. He created the historic trail 25 years ago. You don't have to update that one. Like, it's not changing.
Yeah, we haven't had any new historic buildings added.
He had to put the one got torn down, but he hasn't had to
Yeah.
like, that one hasn't had to change, right? But with the murals, it's gonna keep changing. So like, you know, I think that would be a way that we could keep people to go on that. But those are the best way to get people to see the downtown stores. Like, that's what we give them to get them to the downtown stores. So that's something that I would love to see us spend maybe some of that money on, to like direct people through downtown, because
Yeah,
and
and
the
that's
alley,
definitionally wayfinding. You know,
Yeah.
that's absolutely legal use of. funds.
I'd love to take the other side of that coin, take
Mhm.
hot funds. There's no reason that some industrious person couldn't keep that map up. Sure, you don't want Nancy Whitlock to do it perhaps, but why not be able to hire somebody on Megan's side of the world to keep something like that up? It's important, you know, to drive tourists to where you'd like them to go. And while I appreciate the trail, I can just see myself walking down 6th Street and missing 2 shops. That's all.
Hmm,
That's just the other side of the coin.
right.
Oh, nobody liked that idea, did they?
Yeah, when she did that one on the hotel in Sydney, I wrote her about, you know, hey, do you want to do more of this? She said, not when it's hot, but that she's willing. So
So maybe for the next meeting, and I'm the one who said hot committee ought to meet more than once a year, so it's my fault. Because my put is, there's the annual activity you all go through to say, how do you allocate resources? But to Chris's point, let's start this agenda item, we have resources available. Council really looks to you all to say, how could we more strategically apply those resources about bringing people into Alpine? And you might want to put that on the agenda for the next meeting to say, maybe we can brainstorm some ideas. And no, John, your idea did not get forgotten. But in terms of that, may be, you know, something to look at, but really have the constructive dialogue about how do we bring more people in? Because my motivation is more people in, heads and beds, more sales tax, all's good for the city and all good for businesses.
yeah, and yes,
I think the first step before you do any strategic grant plan or thought process is, what do you want to keep in it for the minimum?
There you go.
Because you also have to take into consideration that if we have an unfortunate event and we don't have that tourism one year,
Yep.
we're on a downhill spiral right now. So the money is not going to be overspent or underspent. The minimum balance, and then look at what your difference is, what you want to utilize it for. And maybe it's a 5-year strategic plan where each year you do a different project. You could take 100,000 each year and put it, we budget 420, but we're gonna put another 100,000 for events.
Yep.
And give it back to the people who are bringing in the people to spend the money. But you wanna start with what your base is. Everyone thinks you have a million, you really don't.
right.
I'm gonna tell you that now.
Yeah, and
Our
you'll
financial
notice
planning says you don't.
you'll notice I mentioned no numbers because I knew there's money there, but we always have had to have, we have contingency and we have that baseline. And I don't know what that is. Yeah, please.
But there's the part that council, the required money that is not even this that we're talking about, right?
It's all put together.
Yeah, it's all together.
Okay, so
So what is in reserve, the 80-something thousand, is still part of the fund balance.
what's the,
You have to remember, there's more that goes into it than what comes in, what goes out. You have your liabilities, you have, I can't think, guys. I'm on vacation.
But it's,
The reoccurring, there's a lot more that goes into it.
but if you looked and said, if there's an extra $50,000, what would you do with it?
Mhm.
That's the question.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the number is, where would you make some strategic investments to try and make some differences?
And- Balance for this year.
It looks like, looking at the data that you have, looks like the STRs are only experiencing like 50% or less occupancy over a year. And so it looks like there's a lot of opportunity right there to do advertising to your main cities like San Antonio or Austin, to come do like some authentic West Texas home, like stay in an authentic West Texas home in Alpine. And
That's what I
walk
had
the
actually made a
streets
note of, like, what about art, like a large ad campaign, like a,
yeah, for the
Maybe.
SDRs, like give back to them directly.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, here's what they do. And it puts more heads.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll be very interested to share with you the comparison to the hotels as well, and see what's that occupancy number, what's the supply demand picture with hotels.
but the numbers you put up, what month was the big huge drop? Because your February you said was up 10% from 23 to 24. That was the one that I
Yeah,
saw. was
January
1%.
is always a drop,
Right,
and
but
for
compared
short-term
year over
rentals.
year, because Megan said we're down huge. So what month was such a big difference?
Well, I haven't actually seen it yet in
You
the
haven't seen
numbers
it
I've
drop
seen.
yet.
I haven't seen, and I'm seeing this upward trend, so I'm going to be really interested to see.
What we're bringing in is
Yeah.
for what we've been bringing. And
But-
that's either
but it's
people
not-
may not be reporting, or they're just not collecting tax.
They're not- they're late.
So your
The
booking
payment-
is showing no drop, but your collections are showing a drop.
And the collections always trail.
Right, they're
You
always
know, because
behind.
it's quarterly and it's based on when that person writes a check. So
Right, so you don't have collections yet for March and April.
No, not for the end of the quarter. But at the same time, this is why he always has the big push right at the end, because then we know we also have big events that happen.
So it's not really fair to say like we're on a downward spiral because we don't have,
When I look from the month to month, from year to year, I can't. But if I get hit really large the end of this quarter, and it makes up the difference, then that would be good for month. to month.
So, yeah, I look forward to our meeting after we finish our grant stuff and really maybe we can look at our timelines then and look at some of those data reports and see where do we think the opportunities might be.
When I look at my own data for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
2022, I had a lot of record months in 2022. And we attributed it to COVID and people getting back out.
Yeah.
Is there a way to go back and recapture that enthusiasm that
people had money,
Yeah,
they had COVID money,
they had COVID money and they
they had all the
And they had-
stimulus money. Now they have no money.
we were the opportunity. Yeah.
And
that's
they're
true.
in tons.
Disposable income is that like all-time low.
And inflation is higher, so like, maybe we should explore where we're at.
Thing is, it's on money. It's the fuel prices, cost of living. I mean, not everyone, I mean, I didn't have COVID. So I think it's just a little contribution of everything. 22, I think, was the big year because one, everyone could travel better and feel more comfortable about not. 23, we still kind of stayed fairly.
Also in 22, people were traveling close to home,
true that?
21 and 22, and now they're going overseas, and now we're getting overseas.
Yeah,
people
because we
again,
have overseas
finally.
people back. I've had,
Like, I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit of everything.
Probably just going back to it.
And maybe you guys take some of that extra and you put it into the big advertising. A little extra back into the event so that they have a little bit more money to advertise, because they all advertise to their markets. you know, Art Walk is gonna know who to advertise to get people. And maybe when you're looking at the events, you make sure that, do we have one every month? So those months where your businesses or the city may not have that, you know, big in January, perfect time. We all know January goes like that.
All the J months, right?
Is someone-
January and June.
Is someone looking at hosting an event, even if it's just a starter event, a small event that maybe could bring something in? And try to, but I know Chris has done an excellent job with trying to have the conversation with, hey, instead of doing it May when we have 5 other events, why not do it in April? You know, so you spread the wealth.
No, it's April. Everybody has their event in April. April, the third weekend of April, we had 900 things
Yeah.
going on.
I mean, you got Gym and Mineral, you had Spirits of the West.
Earth Day.
I mean,
we
there's
had
a lot that
patio
goes
sale,
on.
We had
and trying
everything.
to spread that out might help businesses as well, if we have a constant flux of things going.
What event is your biggest weekend?
Art Walk.
People are gonna shop.
And Viva Big Bend, people are gonna drink,
Mm-hmm.
and we do get mixed beverage back off that. So it does have a good influence.
Okay, well,
Chris, is it possible, like, when all these big events are advertising and using advertising dollars, that like the city can piggyback on them and like advertise like Airbnbs in the area, or like highlight homes, like each home gets like, you know, their months to shine in the sun through advertising through these events, and so it's
kinda-
on top of whatever else they're doing.
there's no reason we couldn't, like, one thing that comes that's easier for the Holland, like, we do like a package, like an offer that's related to that property, like if you could do a discount or do something where a highlight, but it's like
Oh, yeah, for
and
sure.
and that
Some sort of deal.
like, so I've done with the Holland a few times, it's easy for them to give away a couple of nights, you know, it's not so easy if you've only got one space, but the agreement there is that we make a little contest form on the website, we collect an email address, we, you know, pick the winner and get the winner connected to the hotel to make the reservation, and then both the hotel and the city have that email, all those emails to market to.
Well, like, for example, instead of giving stuff away for free,
Mhm.
like, to where if you're advertising for a View Big Bend, you're like, check out these local places to
Yeah.
stay. These are like on the map, the closest to these venues, like, whoever you're interested in, like, here's the place
Right.
you should stay to get close to them, and they're offering a special discount for these dates or whatever,
Yes.
that you can like click on because everybody's virtual.
What if you did, and don't think of this as me as a resident, okay? I love it when it's a vote for. You don't get anything for it, but vote for the best STR in Alpine, stay at any of these
Just to get
locations,
them looking.
list them all out,
Yeah.
and then stay there between this date, June 1st and June 30th,
There you go.
and help decide who has the
Great idea.
the best STR, and have some did they have a Western field, like have little, categories to it. And then I know if I go and I stay and I can vote, we could do a little QR code that could be at the STR so people could just take it and vote. And I don't know how it works, but I mean, I like those. I get a kick out of them.
Yeah, and then you can offer them like Groupons to restaurants that want to participate.
Yep, yep.
For a discount there.
And then you get all your STRs.
And a coupon for Wasserman Ranch.
So for some folks.
You
Yeah.
just got written up in Texas Highway Magazine.
Hey,
But so to me, you entice them to come.
Yeah, the
because it's gonna be
engagement.
a little bit of a competition, and you list all. I would have to argue if the city's gonna use the hot funds, that they have to be a registered STR.
There you go.
Well, that gives them more incentives, like, have you registered because we're doing all these programs.
So we sent out a email to all the STRs telling them that they could, if they would become dark sky compliant, that we would highlight them, and not a single person did it.
How did you contact them?
Chris sent it out.
yeah, I have an email list
Oh,
that
And we said, hey, if you guys fix your lighting, we'll feature you.
You know, the city of Alpine offers a rebate, if you would, for any of the film companies staying in the hotels, depending on the number of nights. And I must admit that when I first heard Chris talk about it, I was kind of thought it was sort of a little hokey. Well, I'm amazed at the feedback I get. Not one of them, you know, dislikes it. All of them think it's a great idea. They don't care if it's just a couple $100. So I think that's kind of in the same direction.
I will say that there's been one place that has contacted Stephen Hunnell and said that they want him to come out and look at their place and start the process. But like to offer that and have like nobody bite is kind of disappointing.
You gotta keep fishing.
Yeah.
Well, I like to me, like take it out of the STR's hands and make it the competition. And then they're gonna be like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
I'm registered, they're advertising my place, someone's gonna stay here, and they're gonna vote possibly that I'm a good place to stay.
Cool.
Those
Just a
are-
thought.
Yeah, those are great ideas. And let's keep talking about them.
I think Alpine needs its own stargazing site. Marathon has one, Marfa Lights, we need it.
I was trying to figure out a park. I wanted this to have
We
a
had
dark sky
great
park.
participation in the Dark Skies event at Coconut.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at how dark it is because I don't go out after dark.
That's good to hear because went around with Laura and I kept hearing, no, there's that light.
Laura's
no,
like a
that's-"
little negative about the darkness, but it was really dark out there. And Steven is more like, it's all right. Like he's like, it's good for people to see like where the problems are too. Like it's a good education. And you can stand out there and see very obviously who the problems are. Like you can see it very easily when you're out there, but you could still see like a lot. And
Sure.
he,
The parks aren't open after.
I know.
yeah.
I knew it would take council action to
Yes.
designate such a
Yeah.
thing, but I wanted to find just the right spot and suggest it, but I
Yeah.
didn't get that far.
But that was
Get our own Marfa, not a Marfa Lights facility, but have our own viewing facility, you know?
I like the old theater down there.
The amphitheater.
Yeah.
oh the Coconut Lodge one.
Yeah.
It's in terrible shape though.
it is.
Oh, it's so bad. There's like wasp nests all over those trees and it's just, it needs so much repair. The whole back of that lodge is a mess now. It looks very sad.
But yes, there's opportunity there for sure. And that, and Dark Skies is absolutely something that we're promoting a lot and talking about.
2/3 of the people who come here because of our dark skies. So that's something that Chris and I actually talked about today, like because we did the dark skies thing, like I think we need to continue on with that next year to do something with Stephen again, because it was, I mean, it was a tour bus of 40 Dutch people I ran into trying to figure out where the soccer field was. I was like, this way, because they were here to see the stars.
They're like, where are the stars?
No, where are you guys? And it was really good. It was a lot of locals. It was a local tourist mix. So
Well, Heidi just gave me a business.
yeah, if you want to have there is the Stargazer is one of the Airbnbs that's here. It's out in the county. So that's one of them that I probably sent to you like 4 times, but it's just barely outside of Alpine, so it's not registered. So it's it's in the county. So some of them are just barely outside.
But yeah, one thing I also think there's an opportunity for is booking experiences so that we could promote here. You can have a little private star party and your Airbnb reservation, and book it. But
People would much rather do something like that than have an itinerary now.
Yeah.
That was something that was like talked about in like the travel conferences, is people don't want to come back from vacation feeling like they need a vacation because they're overscheduled. People want to like just let things happen more organically and like find things to do, but have an experience that is the reason why they come, and then let the rest of the things like happen. So,
yeah, well, I have not been able to find somebody willing to do that tour, to be the guide the
Star Tour.
constellation guy, yeah, or whatever.
Mike Davidson supposedly does them.
Yeah, I know.
He does them for the place down. No, he does it for the one that Tony Drury guides for.
I don't-
The new one that's right down at the right after the interchange. But I can't remember what it's called. But
It's not Wild River. The girls from Tennessee.
Yes, there are, and we'll keep talking about them.
We
So,
need a train event too,
yeah,
cause I just sell train stuff. There's train enthusiasts like crazy.
I agree. One of the things I've had on my list before is some kind of interactive thing for kids in the visitor center, and including that, like, we were founded because of the train. I think that, telling a story. It's not the sleeping giant.
Yeah. I'm gonna, this is a total aside. Sorry if I'm rabbit holing us. I'm gonna kind of relaunch the store and do a animal information in the store with more pictures and more signs that tell you about them, if that makes sense, to make it more of a
Education.
as well as
Yeah.
shopping.
That's good.
I will come and talk to you about that.
Oh yeah, you need Chris in there with his bear books. They were a big hit at
I
kindergarten.
bet. I bet.
Okay, well, anything else you want to
I
touch on?
have,
Right.
Like, that calendar deal, like, instead of repainting every year, like, why not just put the year that Alpine was founded or something?
Which calendar?
The one downtown that you're
Mural?
talking about repainting the dates on it.
On the side of the convenience store?
Weren't you guys originally talking about, like, having Michelle come and redo the mural?
Oh, no, that was actually just the
The
map.
map.
Oh,
The
the
map
map,
brochure.
not the actual map. just the
Exactly.
brochure.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
No,
Because,
but even
yeah.
the brochure, like, because like you have, like, Monty just, I mean, it's not a mural, but like he keeps adding very quickly, like, more murals, and like,
Oh.
people will call me and they'll be like, now we have a mural, get it on the map. And I'm like, I'm not gonna change this. This is an artist's like work. She drew it. Like, I can't redraw this. I can't add a number. Like, that's not how it works.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, no, it's the actual map. Yeah, it's it's just
What is the date on that calendar? Like, on the big one?
I think it was the year they did it.
yeah.
And then they just, because it was based on both those two anyway, not three, because the Mercado two, they were all based on calendar art originally. And so, like those promotional calendars.
The one that the main one on the over here is 1936. It's a 1936
Nice.
calendar
Oh,
from
okay.
Mexico, and the framed one is in the jewelry shop.
Okay, so they used the year from the calendar they based.
So that is actually crazy. It's the same mural that's on the bar and grill I used to run in my small hometown. Has the exact same mural
What town is that?
in Arcola, Illinois. I was like there 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the same mural. I've been looking at it for years, didn't realize it.
That's a great image.
Yeah, very funny.
Yeah. So our next meetings would be after the 14th. And if we look at Thursdays, and so we'll want Gio's input with the city calendar here. But is it realistic, Gio, to meet on the 20th
The 20th of June?
of June
I'll be out of town until July 10th.
till July
To leave
10th?
for 1 month.
No, there's a Alpine Business Alliance meeting
You
that night.
can.
I can do
You won't
I'm not
count
here.
on, so we'll have to make sure we get. Oh, right. Well, here's the next question.
You're under the gun for budgets then, aren't you?
Is
'Cause-
that because we were hoping for,
Because last year's you guys approved on like the 13th or something.
We're a little behind this year
Okay.
on pretty much everything. It's okay. No stress. The first meeting would be a workshop.
it would.
So all the information would still go out to all of the members.
Yep.
But if you set the first meeting, even if it's not the 20th, but the week after Geo, I don't know what date that falls on.
27th,
Mm-hmm.
we stay with Thursdays.
Do it the 27th, and then what's the Thursday after the 10th?
That is the 11th.
So then, is that a Thursday?
Yes,
Is that July?
yes.
And then it would be an action for the 11th. And we want them close together so that obviously we can get them on there for the budget. But because of attendance, we want to make sure that everyone
Yeah.
who's here tonight is available.
And it's possible that Carrie Wilson could be approved before the 11th, so we would have another shot at a quorum. But since we counted both Rick and myself, we made it tonight, so that makes it a lot more doable. Okay,
Carrie,
that-
I think, is on the agenda for June 4th.
I think you're right, Gio.
great.
And that's okay with you guys. I mean, you guys really are, and I know your schedule's crazy too.
It should be noted too, that if the city council, boots me off, if you would, not meaning any offense, that you're gonna be short another person.
That's an ordinance update, John, and.
So it's
that
gonna
would
take 8 weeks.
Don't hold your breath, you're stuck.
And that's like
Yeah.
After, an 8-week process after budget. Right?
Yeah, budget's kind of gonna be my priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got a while.
Okay, well then we have our next two meetings scheduled for June 20th and July 11th.
No.
June 27th.
June 27th, exactly. That is what my calendar said.
Gio, were those 2 dates okay with you?
Yes, I believe so. Mhm.
I'm sorry, July what?
11.
11th,
Thank you.
yes, June 27th, July.
Yes,
11th.
dear.
I can't do the 11th. That's fine. That's Annie's birthday.
Excellent. All right.
That would be fine. She's 6 years old.
I know.
No, 6?
Bring them.
Oh, my gosh.
6 going on 16.
Yeah, for real. For real. I think you guys all know her.
Man,
She had her unbirthday at school today. They did summer birthdays.
Okay, well, that fulfills our agenda. So then at 6:55, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Chris.